All right, we're starting to figure this thing out a little bit at a time, I know. But we talked about last time the difference between equal and same and how many differences there are between men and women. Also, before that, we talked about our filters and how they impact everything that goes on with us. Something else I want to do today, talking about differences and filters, is I want to bring that together and talk a little bit about definitions, even codes of how we communicate. Because whenever you take the difference in the amount of information that we collect in and all of our experiences and everything else, you have to take into consideration that we probably define words differently than another person does. Take, for example, if you met somebody from a different culture, if they came in and they talked to you, you might have the same basic word, but it might mean something totally different to them than it does to you. I know growing up on a dairy farm, for example, I had a very hard time communicating to people that I know that grew up in a very urban environment what we considered hard work versus what they considered hard work. Now, many of them thought about desk jobs, or they thought about, the kind of manual labor jobs that were 9 to 5 and, required a lot of strength and required a lot of stamina, but it wasn't the same as what I thought of hard work in a farm where you were 24/7, you just had to get things done. Hard work was different for each of us. And when we said those words, we meant something a little bit different because of our filters, how we were raised, where we were raised, the people we were raised around, the things that we had known throughout most of our life. When it comes to men and women, those differences can be huge. Okay, think about it. You're hot, they're cold. Same room. How can that be? Because we define it slightly different. We're experiencing the exact same temperature, but we're experiencing it differently. Guys, you have to be more sensitive to that whenever you think about the idea that women collect more information than we do. Okay, even the sensitivity of her skin is different than the sensitivity of our skin. Okay, that's biology. There are certain things that we just have to pay attention to that don't allow us to operate on the exact same level. We have to understand that definitions have a lot to do with how we see and perceive the world. So when you go back and you look at your list of things that are in your filter, you go back and you look at your list of things that are different between you and a member of the opposite sex that you communicate with all the time. I want you to look at those and consider how those things can filter into very simple differences in definition, how we define things differently. Whenever you say one thing, it might mean something totally different than what that person hears and receives, and vice versa. Okay, because we take offense a lot of times at something someone says or even how they say it, when the truth is they didn't mean it in a way that was offensive at all. It just meant a little something different to them than it did to us. Once we've got that understanding together of our filters, starting to understand other people's filters, and we look at the differences, what I want you to do now might seem a little weird, but I want you to give it a try. Whenever you think of that person that you communicate with most of the opposite sex, the one that you have the greatest potential, but you also have the greatest issues when it comes to communicating with each other, I want you to consider those differences as cultural differences. I want you to look at that person and treat them as if they were from another culture, another country even. Because if you were talking with somebody from another country or from a different culture, you would treat them a lot differently. You would treat them with the understanding that they probably don't have the same vocabulary you do. They don't use the same words that you do. And even the same words may mean something totally different. I think back to elementary school of a kid named Billy who moved to our southern Missouri town from South Florida. Billy had never seen snow. So whenever we tried to talk to him about snow as winter was coming on, he had no concept of it. I mean, he had no concept past the ice that you put in a drink of frozen water, really. He'd never seen anything like it. But whenever the snow first started to fall and the teacher let Billy go out in it, all of a sudden he had a whole new appreciation for the word that we were talking about. He had an experience to back it up. You need to understand that the people you communicate with may not have the exact experience, they may not have the exact same definition, but if we treat them as if they have the ability to understand it the same way we do, and we seek to understand their perspective on it, we're going to have a lot better opportunity to communicate profitably and to release the kind of potential that we have in that communication and in those interactions. So look at that person, look at those differences, and consider, how can I treat them like they're from a different culture and be able to really release what it is that we have available to us in our communication. This is going to be a big exercise. I can't wait to go through the next one with you. Talk to you soon.